I am the science coordinator at Santa Clara County Office of Education. And welcome to our 27th webinar. Wow. And I'm joined by Karen. Say a little bit.
Hi, I'm Karen Larson. I'm the coordinator of computer science at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. Like Jennifer, we're both former teachers, and happy to have you with us today.
So the next thing we're going to do is actually introduce ourselves in a different way. If I can go to the next slide, which I have to click. Sorry. So thank you. We're so glad you're here. So we kind of already told us who you are, Christy, but just maybe a little bit more about yourself. And what is your favorite science topic? So I'll model it. So I'm Jen Mutch, and I'm, again, science coordinator at Santa Clara County. And I really love outdoor education and environmental literacy, but I was reminded last night how much I loved human anatomy. That was like my favorite topic in high school and college. So.
I'm Christy Frankina. I'm an assistant principal at Leyva Middle School. I support our science department as they are teaching our middle school students. I always loved geology, rocks and parts of the earth and volcanoes and all that fun stuff.
I like geology.
One of my favorite topics too, but I didn't take that in high school. I took it as later as an adult and went back and studied it through West Valley College. And it was just fascinating to learn about the geology of California. And we even had some field trips that we went, traveled up and down the coast to visit different beaches to study the geology. Definitely my favorite.
Hey, Christine, glad you can join us. We're just getting started.
Thanks.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your favorite topic in science is.
My name is Christine Saloom. I'm the secondary science TOSA in Santa Clara Unified, originally from San Diego. And favorite science topic. I think the human body, like how things work, and I love disease. So like thinking about how things can go wrong in so many different ways that's really exciting to me.
That's cool. You missed me. I did say I love human anatomy too. I wanted to be a physical therapist when I was younger. So, I turned into a teacher. So it's fun. All right. So we're going to just go ahead and get started. And these things that I'm going to share with you, probably things you've already know and have done with your students, but it's just a kind of a back to a little reminder of here are some things you can do as with distance learning and how you can do that. So one of the things that really stood out to me, I read an article from STEM Teaching Tools, which I'll connect with our in our notes, but that was just a really good jumping off point for me to kind of think about how to support science learning and distance learning. And so one of the things that came about was just having students use a notebook and continue if you've used a notebook already in your class, but just to continue to use a notebook. And this is just a way for students to make kind of a daily observation when they're either going outside or just in the house, things like that, making sense of phenomenon, using those science practices that hopefully the teachers have already been utilizing in the classroom. And then using a practice or protocol, which most of you may have heard of, is called What Do You Notice and What Do You Wonder? So I also linked that in my notes, and it comes from the Beatles project, but it's also in every curriculum content area tends to use a notice wonder protocol, but it's just a really good way to just get kids to do observations. And something I thought of, which I didn't write down because we're going to talk about phenomena also, but just when they're outside observing things, if maybe they're going out on a walk with their family and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and actually have you, if you have a piece of paper or a notebook in front of you, we're going to do a little practice with science notebooking in a very simple protocol. I just missed I didn't know where my pencil was. I always have a notebook on hand. Especially now that I take notes on the computer, but now I need to take notes in paper too more often. I feel like I remember things better when I do that. So I'm going to have you just do some noticings and wonderings on the next slide. I'm going to show you just a picture, and I want you to write down a couple of noticings and wonderings. So you have your paper and a writing tool out. You're going to write some noticings and wonderings. You might also want to think about what it might remind you of. So that's another way for kind of connecting to prior knowledge for students, is thinking about what does this remind you of also, if it's a phenomenon you're presenting. So we're going to do this for a couple minutes. So here's something that you can look at. And I want you to think about, what do you notice and what do you wonder? I'll give you a couple minutes to write it down, and then we'll do some sharing. Okay, so I wrote down a few things. I want you to go ahead and you can either unmute yourself and share a couple things, or if you want to put it in the chat. But since we're a small group, unmuting would be great and we can share. So Christy, you want to go ahead and start?
I noticed that there's a large boulder and it looks like it's in the middle of a road or a highway. And I wonder how it got there and if anyone was hurt.
I wrote that down too. Christine?
I noticed that the boulder in the middle of the road, I noticed that there's a lot of smaller rocks, and in the background it looks like there's a lot of dirt that sort of slants down. And so I wonder if there was a mudslide.
That's good. Do you want to share, Karen, something you noticed or wonder?
I noticed that it's because of the street sign, that it's either hilly road and it's a windy road. So we're in the hills somewhere. I also noticed that it almost looks like half of the street has been either washed away, because there's, as Christine mentioned, there's a lot of dirt and debris on one half of the yellow line, where it looks like a street on the other half of the yellow line. So like something had washed out or washed through that area.
So is there anything that you may have written down that it reminds you of? Does it remind you of anything?
It reminds me of Highway 17.
I put it reminds me of like the Sierra Nevadas. It looks like a big hunk of granite.
So I'm not going to give away anything here. Well, no, I will. I'll put the facilitator hat on. So, and this is just a way to open up a conversation, right, with students. And it could be a lead. It could be an anchoring phenomenon. We're going to get into phenomena in a minute, but this could be an anchoring phenomenon for some studying. But basically just going through that and having that discussion with students. And then we're going to also talk about a collaborative piece later, but you could have students share their noticings and wonderings on, like a Padlet or a Jamboard or something like that. So this is just another way to have a class discussion. If you're doing synchronous learning, this could be a way of doing that. And then having those questions and thoughts coming up. And then the other piece to think about is that, as you know, as teachers, you're listening for those, what their connections are that the students have. You want them to be accessing prior knowledge, which is one of really a strong way to start a unit. And also you're listening in for maybe, we used to call them misconceptions. I kind of like saying preconceptions more often. So things that they are thinking that may not be correct. And then that's just a mental note for the teacher. And what I would suggest is maybe writing those down or just kind of keeping track of, the discussion. So we did share some noticings and wonderings. And I suggested that maybe recording that, keeping track of some of those noticings and wonderings that students have that may not be quite right, or, that they have some weird thoughts about the boulder. I don't know. It came from outer space. It's a meteorite, things like that. Kids will come up with some interesting things. And then using the collaboration tool. Just to give you a little background, that actually is from a rock slide back in, I think it was 2017, in the area of Montecito, which had a really large mudslide and rock slide after the fires down in Southern California. So it's sort of a local and somewhat relevant, even though it's Southern California, those kinds of things happen, like you said, on Highway 17 as well. So connecting that way. So that was just a simple notebook thing. So think about this for a moment and we can share some ideas. What are some ways or other ways that you can use science notebooks in your current mode of teaching and distance learning? Or are you using them already? Or are your teachers using them?
I don't think that my teachers are using science notebooks per se.
I think even my teachers who were using notebooks, I'm not really hearing them talk about them as they're doing distance learning.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, one of the things that I keep sort of trying to bring up is this idea of like getting kids to like look outside and to record some sort of daily observations. And so I'm hearing teachers talk potentially about journaling instead of notebooking. And I think that those are related, but they have some different foci. And so, so I think that already what they're doing with journals could easily have an extension into more of a science notebook, but having more of that processing piece happen, I don't think is. I'm eating lunch. I know you guys don't want to watch me, so that's why I keep muting or turning my camera on and off. So anyway.
That's okay. I'm like still drinking coffee and the dog might pop in. I don't know. Appreciate that. No, I really like what you said, Christine, is that there is a slight difference between journaling and notebooking, but they do connect really well together. And I think just encouraging a daily observation for kids and just looking outside or on their walks, and even if it's digital, they could take photos, or they can, bringing it up and kind of thinking about things that they're seeing, which kind of leads into the next topic of being a phenomenon. So, but yeah, I mean, I was wondering, I read on a few things. I love Twitter, so obviously I tweeted a lot today. I saw in the beginning of all this, people were saying, oh, I didn't have my kids bring their science notebooks home, but now I'm trying to I'm trying to send them home or make sure they're making a notebook at home, and just as a daily journal. And you can get into even historical contexts as well. They should be kind of recording what's happening in their lives, because this is just an unprecedented time, but looking for the good things too, and like positive aspects. So anyway, but yeah, get them, even if they have a couple, like we have at home, a couple pieces of paper, make them fold them, make their own little notebook, and that would be great to have that practice going. So okay, so the next thing is we're going to talk about phenomenon.
I have one more question before you move on.
Oh, sure. Of course. Yeah.
Can you think off the top of your head of any online tools that might be really good for notebooking?
Well, I have actually sort of. I've done it through Google and Google Classroom, Google Docs. I've actually had a training way back when, and I never got there with my middle schoolers, but high school kids, creating a Google website and just journaling on there and tabbing it, maybe, that would be cool. And that creates almost a portfolio for them in the future as well. So
I have too, is you can take Google Slides and change the size of it, so that the sides looks like a notebook. So it can be 8.5 by 11, and then the kids can decorate the cover of it, and then the pages kind of flip through just like you would if you were an actual notebook. So if a teacher wants to create a template for something like that, that's something the kids can do. And then they can bring in video, they can bring in photos, they can bring in text, they can draw their own images, they can use that, much like you say, Jen, as a portfolio of their science observations, but it kind of looks like a notebook. It's kind of cool.
I also, I don't have it on my, oh, there it is. There is something on, that they could put on their phone called Side Journal or Science Journal. Have you heard of that through Google?
Right. I think that there's an app even for the Chromebooks.
Yeah.
And it seems to do a lot of sort of like data gathering, but I wasn't sure how much it did of allowing sort of these more free form discussions and these free form sort of thoughts.
Yeah, I haven't played with it enough, but I do see that they have like an observation section, but not anything. I mean, they could write and add things and photos and things like that. But yeah, I think you're right. There's not as much. But we're going to get into another tool called Jamboard, which maybe you've heard of, and that could be helpful with that process too. But yeah, Google, the science app, I really want to, science journal, I should say. I really want to kind of get to know that a little bit better because I think that's another good tool. All right, so getting into phenomenon and phenomena. I always think of that song. So phenomenon is singular, phenomena is plural. And it's really important when you're, especially now, because just getting kids excited about learning and doing science is really good to find some really good relevant phenomena for them. And one of the things I always hear in all my years of doing NGSS is that it doesn't have to be phenomenal. Just even that photo I showed you, it's not like, woo, that's exciting. I mean, but it did make you ask questions and think about things. So it's basically something that's observable. And this is the definition from Achieve. Something that's observable events occur in the universe that we can use science knowledge to explain or predict. There's lots of other definitions out there, but this is a pretty succinct one I like. And sometimes I think people, when with the teachers I work with, I think they do feel like phenomenon has to be mind blowing, and it can be very simple. And one of the things I was thinking of as I was preparing this was the kids could find phenomenon probably to share, and that would be cool. A cool thing too is when you are having them look outside and going and looking for things, even in their kitchen or doing something at home. They could probably find things that they think would be phenomenon, and they could share that too. In fact, a couple weeks ago, I was drinking an iced coffee, and I poured some creamer over it, and the pattern it made on the ice was really cool. And I'm like, oh, that's and it just made me wonder what was happening, and so things like that. So one of the things that I shared in my notes, and there's lots of really great websites to find phenomenon. And I'll share those when we share the notes later, but ngssphenomenon.com I think is one. And then there's a phenomenon project through San Diego County Office of Education that has brought in relevant California-based phenomenon, which is pretty cool. And I actually did a little work with them when they were up in Santa Cruz County doing some things. But I want to show you one that actually now is on the Phenomena website, which is local. I don't know if you saw this on social media. Oh, there's the link. Okay. So this is the website, ngssphenomenon.com. And this was taken in a webcam pretty recently, I think, just maybe a few months ago. You guys, can you see that on the screen? Oh, come on. Let's do it again.
Yeah, just the image of your slides.
Oh, just the slides? Okay.
It looks like it's loading.
Oh yeah, it does look like it's loading, yeah. I see a little blue circle.
There it goes. Yeah. So if you didn't see this, it was through the, I think it's called POST, the Peninsula Open Space Trust, has webcams across the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I know this is really slow. My computer, my internet's been slow.
One thing I love about this too is usually when we talk about local phenomena, we do really talk about like things that are in the mountains or things that are on the other side. And this is Coyote Valley, which is like right here, right between San Jose and Morgan Hill. So it's super local and isn't like well, those mountains you see off in the distance, it's like,
Yeah.
this is the flatlands, guys.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I love this because it went viral. I don't know if you knew this, but if, I'm again being a Twitter weirdo, but it went viral. And so now it's on the national, Phenomena website. But it was just so cool because people were like, wait, coyotes and badgers? What? They hang out? What is that? And so it just makes, again, it's a simple little clip you can show. And if you're studying life science or environmental science, it could be just a way of like kids going, oh, look at that. Oh, looks like the coyote wants to play with the badger. So I really like this one. But you're right, Christine. It's really trying to find what's relevant to the students' lives and what they can actually connect with. And maybe they go to Coyote Valley, like you said, maybe they go hiking there or have gone hiking there, and you can show them a map. Hey, this is where it is. And this is right in your backyard. So anyway, that was just one example that I thought was kind of cool to share with you all. But oops, wrong one. We're not there yet. Hold on, Jen. Hold on a second. I got to stop the share real quick. Because I don't know where my slides went. I think I have to go back here. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. So basically something that's relevant and interesting to their lives. And even like you said, if they go out in their backyard or they go on a walk, they really can find, if you can find something that they can connect with and ask questions about. So let's do a little thinking again. What are some phenomena that you have presented or you think you can present to students virtually in this new world that we're in with teaching? You can share in the unmute and share if you want.
I wonder if there's relevant phenomena around viruses and germs and contracting things and washing hands and things that might be of interest.
Yeah, in fact, I'll now that you say that, I'll add it to my science notes. Exploratorium has done a couple things with that. They're not the only ones, but a few of our partner organizations have developed some lessons around that. And they did talk about hand washing and soap and what it does. And kids could explore, they have dish soap at home, you would think, and they could kind of explore stuff that way.
I almost think too, just even having students look at graphs of the coronavirus and like think about what's going on here, what story does the graph tell, is also going along with looking at phenomena. So that's one of the directions that I've been going with the viruses.
And
yeah,
go that way also with the changes in air pollution and water quality and how that's improved since, compare the onset of the virus with the changes in the air quality through graphs.
You read my mind, Karen. I was just going to say that.
As well as the animals coming out and seeing animals that you haven't seen before. I just thought of something else, but as so often happens to me in this time, the thoughts fly out as fast as they fly in.
You gotta go like this.
I know.
Right?
Just sharing other videos too, like San Diego, LA area just had a big red tide, a bioluminescent red tide.
Yes.
And so like showing those videos from down there again.
Oh my gosh, I've been loving those. I can't stop watching them. There's one, I don't know if you've seen, there's a group that goes out of Newport and they show the dolphins swimming with the bioluminescence. It's like, it's so beautiful.
Well, and I have to say too, I've seen that in person and it was the most, like I've got like these big two science memories. One is seeing totality of the eclipse and the other is the bioluminescent red tide, and just like those, like nothing can do it justice unless you're actually there, but you get a hint.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. So those are good suggestions. And there's, again, there's so many different ways you can do this. If you already are in the middle of using curriculum and you're you know, your teachers are kind of hooked in that, just making sure they go back to phenomenon when they're presenting their lessons and having the kids, you know, make sense of things. So, all right. So the next thing, and this is not the only collaborative board or thing that you could be using, but I'm just getting more familiar with Jamboard. I don't know why. This is like the first year I've heard of it because all of a sudden it's like, woo. But how many have used it, or have any of you used it yet or tried it out, Jamboard? Except for
I've heard of it. I've
okay.
troubleshooted a couple teachers through it and don't really know what I was helping with, but seems like it's cool.
Yeah. So there is a bit.ly there that I forgot to copy and paste. So I see maybe, oops, sorry. Oh, I just linked to it. Maybe Karen, do you mind copying and pasting the link in the chat so they can get to it? Because it's kind of long, but we're gonna practice it a little bit. So I did create a Jamboard that we can share on and do some thinking on. But one of the things that, as we know with any collaborative tool, it's really important to make sure that you're providing expectations for the students beforehand, because that's what Karen and I were talking about before we started, is how kids tend to put interesting things up on shared documents sometimes. So just making sure you have those expectations and parameters for the kids. And then this could be a way that you can be sharing your ideas, again, back to the noticings and wonderings, how kids can share those. It could be a way to do, if you guys use a driving question board or DQB for your unit, just to start that off virtually. And then another technique is the question formulation technique, if you're familiar with that. I won't get into it today, but maybe a later webinar could be about that if you're not familiar. And then there's different choices. So when you're on the Jamboard, just kind of like Padlet and Wakelet, I think the Jamboard gives you more opportunities for drawing and writing directly, but you can provide pictures, you could write on Post-its, and that's kind of where the examples on the next slide are from. I went on Twitter again before this. Oh, maybe it's going, nope, not yet. That slide doesn't want to load. I gave some examples from Twitter, which that's kind of where I started learning more about Jamboard. And there's some really cool examples there. But since this is not loading, let's go ahead and check out the Jamboard. So did you both get on the link and you're able to get on there?
I am there.
Okay. And let me open that Jamboard up. So also, I'll share it on the screen. So basically, this is just our next kind of discussion is on the Jamboard. So and just try play with it a little bit and see what you want to do as far as. Let me go back to here and here. Oh, I see it. Somebody got it up already. So most often, like I said, most people are putting in kind of Post-it notes and things like that. So I put 3 kind of questions up there, just thinking about what science resources have you used so far that have helped with distance learning? What kind of strategies maybe would support science instruction with distance learning, and what other collaboration tools do you think could be used? So go ahead and add a few things on there. And let me share my screen again in a second so we can see it together. Well, you guys can see it anyway, but and one of the things I like about it is you can do some sorting of some type. So if there's like some noticings, wonderings, they can kind of, okay, what did you notice? What did you wonder? So the teacher can pull them together and kind of categorize them. There's also the ability to bring in a photo. So I put in the Mobius strip of NGSS there as a photo. So this could be where if you are asking students to go out and kind of do some exploration, and they could bring in photos and share them on the board, and then kids can comment on them. This could be another way to, just throwing out lots of ideas, but if kids are doing a consensus model or modeling, ooh, I like that. Just bringing in their models and then having kids give feedback on the models is another great tool to use this for. So the only thing, like I said, again, parameters, I haven't played with this enough to know if you can like stop certain tools. Maybe Karen knows, I don't know. But like, I would suggest just starting with maybe Post-its and photos and not really getting into the writing on it. But I think they can also do their own one board each, like the student can do their own board and share it as well. So it doesn't have to be everyone, but it's just a good collaboration tool. So cool, thanks for sharing. Oh yeah, virtual field trips. We were talking about webcams the other day too for Phenomenon, just like the one I shared.
Has like webinars that you can log into, and they have them at different grade levels at each time of the day. So, and they happen weekly.
Who was it?
Which?
It's the state park system. I can't
Oh yeah,
remember
the ports program. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, that's a great place for just, and it gets an hour of your day. You can, like, teachers can go, hey, go watch, and it's all. I like how it's broken down by grade level, and it's not just science; it's history, social science, science. And,
so it's age appropriate. Yeah,
they're great. They're doing a great job with that, and I love how they have a weekly schedule. I'll add that in my notes too. So, and if you're familiar with Walden West, we did a webinar last week, and Walden West now has something called Nature Nuggets. So they're trying to do some weekly videos. Just one of them was on a Notice and Wonder protocol. They're doing photos. They're all over social media as well, except for Twitter. So I need to get Marie to get on Twitter. But they're going to try to do some live things as well because they're motivated by that. So cool.
And the state parks was also pretty responsive. We reached out to them because they were doing all their virtual things using Facebook Live, and we expressed to them that wasn't a format that worked for many of us, and they were able to give us alternate streams to some of what they were doing. So that was really nice too.
Oh, good. That's awesome. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to, we're actually almost done here. Let me just make sure I got through everything. Oh yeah, I did. So thank you so much for both of you to being here. I think it was really great. Is there any ahas or anything else you wanted to share or add before we end today?
I like the idea of the Jamboard. I think that's a resource that is unknown, and more teachers could use it.
Yeah, especially if they are using Google Classroom too, right? In which I'm assuming most are. And I think it's a really easy extension. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because Padlet, I think you can only do so many, and then you have to pay.
Right.
And
I think there's a limit to 5 right now.
3. I think it's actually 3.
Oh.
Ooh.
Which doesn't get you very far. So I've got several teachers who've paid for it. But seeing this, I'm not sure why they're using Padlet instead of Jamboard. So that's something I'll have to look into. So thank you.
I kind of feel like Padlet, I like Padlet, but I feel like it's more of a resource share. I think that, you can comment and give feedback to it, but I feel like it's gotten to be more like a bulletin board. And this seems to be, it's always been collaborative, but I feel like this is a little bit more collaborative, maybe.
Padlet kind of organizes it for you, whereas this could be very much drag and drop and moving in.
Yeah, a little more organic, right?
Which truthfully, that could be why my teacher, one of the teachers that I'm working with specifically, has chosen to use Padlet instead, is because it does more of that work for her versus this, where she would potentially need to be moving things around a little bit more. I can see too that Padlet's really useful if you want, like, one of the things that we're looking for is something to be able to do threaded discussions a little bit more easily, because we don't have a learning management system, and so we're sort of in this region where we don't have a really good way to do that. And so I think that's what she's using Padlet for. So if she's got each kid putting a thing across the top and then trying to respond to somebody else below that, I can see how Padlet organizes that
Mhm.
out for her. And this would be too freeform for that potentially.
Yeah, that's true. I could see that. Now, Karen, looks like you're going to say something.
I'm just going to add that you can also moderate through Padlet as well. So if we don't have that classroom management piece quite intact yet, there is an
Yeah.
option.
Cool. Awesome. Well, this was great. Thank you both again for coming, and I'm glad it worked out for you all. And again, we have right now we're doing every Monday and Wednesday, I believe. We're doing webinars. We have not firmed up our next ones yet. That's why there's no titles here. But we were actually, Karen and I were talking is maybe kind of doing a little dive into more of like about Padlet and Wakelet and those other pieces that people might be interested in using for collaboration. And I like what you said earlier too, Christine, about maybe some science notebooking platforms. We could dig into that too. But if you are looking for the upcoming ones or past ones, this is our website. So we did last week, like I said, we did Wild and West Nature Nuggets, and then we've done some math focused ones. We've done some language arts and EL supports, which connects to science learning as well. So we've got 27 now. I still can't believe we've had 27 webinars, but anyway. But thank you so much for being here, and we appreciate your support, and let us know how we can support you. And we hope you have a good rest of your week.